this video, I am going to explain about the anticoagulants. The word itself mentioning that anticoagulation. So they are inhibiting the coagulation process or the pathway. Competency for the today's class list the anticoagulants and their mechanism of action. Okay, why we required anticoagulants? It's for collection of the blood sample for laboratory investigations and for preserving the blood for transfusion and for anticoagulant therapy. You know these two. I will explain this very clearly so that you can understand better. First, we will discuss those anticoagulants for blood collections. Here I mentioned 6, but actually there are 5 because double oxalates comes under the oxalates itself. EDTA, that is EDTA, that is ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, sodium citrate, double oxalate, sodium fluoride, oxalates and the heparin. Ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid is used for the hematological tests and it is sodium and potassium salt. For example, sodium and potassium salts of the ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, and it's most powerful. It chelates the blood calcium, means it is forming the coordination complex with the calcium ion because there is acetic acid, that is COO minus is present at the end. So it will bind with the calcium. Once the calcium is getting sequestered or getting chelated, then it can't activate the coagulation pathways. By inactivating the coagulation pathway, we are preventing the blood to getting clotted. We should not use it excessively because excess usage of EDTA decreases in PCV value and increases MCHC and high platelet count. So we will get false results. Sodium citrate, it is mainly used for the coagulation studies and for preserving blood in blood bank. The mechanism is that it prevents the coagulation by inactivating the calcium ions. Most of the anticoagulants here we are using are chelating with the calcium, or they are precipitating the calcium, or they are binding the calcium. Totally they are inhibiting the action of the calcium. By inhibiting that, we are preventing the blood to getting clotted. We have two different types of sodium citrate solutions, two different formulations. Those are 9:1 solution and then the 4:1 solutions. 9:1 solution means 9 volume of blood in 1 volume of citrate solution. If you taking for example here 90 ml of blood in 10 ml of citrate solution, and in same way 4 volume of blood in 1 volume of citrate solution means 40 ml of blood in 10 ml of solution. This is to give a normal picture. 9:1 solution is used for the coagulation studies like prothrombin time and partial thromboplastin time, and 4:1 solution is used for the estimation of the ESR by Westergren method. Double oxalates or the balanced oxalate. Just note down the word balanced here. These contain ammonium and potassium oxalates. So there are two different oxalates, those are ammonium and potassium. This double oxalate is mixture of these two, and it again the same mechanism that is happening with the calcium. Why we are mixing these two different oxalates? Because potassium oxalate causes RBC shrinkage while the ammonium oxalate causing the RBC swelling. So when we mix these two, the overall effect remains normal. So we will get the normal volume of the RBC. Next, the sodium fluoride. It is used for the collecting of the blood specimen for the estimation of the glucose. So to estimate glucose, we need sodium fluoride. I think you studied this from biochemistry, but however I am going to tell you, fluoride is an inhibitor of the glycolytic enzymes. It is inhibitor of the step 9, that is enolase. It inhibits the enolase. You can check it from the biochemistry. However, we know that fluoride is not strong anticoagulant, so we will mix with the oxalates. Oxalates, so as I already mentioned, those are the sodium, potassium and ammonium or the lithium salts of oxalates, and they are acting as anticoagulants. Again, the same mechanism that they form insoluble complexes with the calcium. Next comes the heparin. It is one of the natural constituent of the blood. So heparin is present within our own blood, and it is also commercially available as the sodium, lithium and potassium or the ammonium salts of the heparin. Actually, the mechanism of heparin is that it neutralizes the thrombin and prevents coagulation for approximately up to 24 hours, and it facilitates the action of the antithrombin 3. So it is anti-clotting mechanism, means it helps the process of fibrinolysis also, and it prevents the formation of the fibrin from the fibrinogen. It is commonly used for the osmotic fragility test and blood gas determination and the pH assay, and it is also commonly used for the anticoagulant therapy, that is, as I already mentioned, here you can see there is separate heading, so this is same, and for experimental purposes in animals. Now let's discuss about the anticoagulants for the treatment or for anticoagulant therapy. The uses are, it we use it for treatment or prevention of the thrombosis, that is intravascular clots, management of thrombotic diseases like venous thromboembolism, placement of mechanical heart valves, as heart valve prosthesis is associated with the risk of thromboembolism. Artificial heart valve might cause thromboembolism. In that case, we use anticoagulant therapy, and it prevents the thromboembolism in chronic rheumatic atrial fibrillations, and it is used as prophylaxis after attacks of cerebral ischemia, and it is used for the management of ischemic heart diseases and peripheral vascular disease, and used for placement of central venous catheters. Okay, the oral anticoagulants that we use: vitamin K antagonists and glycosaminoglycans, inhibitors of factor 10 and inhibitors of the thrombin. Vitamin K antagonists, warfarin and the dicumarol are the commonly used vitamin K antagonists. We know that vitamin K is required for the gamma carboxylations of the vitamin K dependent factors. What are the vitamin K dependent factors? Factor 2, 7, 9 and 10. These are the vitamin K dependent factors. Factor 2, 7, 9 and 10. 9 and 10. These are the vitamin K dependent factors. It works by inhibiting the vitamin K epoxide reductase enzyme. It acts on vitamin K antagonists act on vitamin K epoxide reductase enzyme. Glycosaminoglycans, these are oral heparin sulfate and the iduronate glycosaminoglycans. Inhibitors of the factor 10A, as we know that activation of the factor 10 is the key step in the blood coagulations. So by selectively inhibiting the factor 10, we can get the potent antithrombotic activity, and it doesn't affect bleeding time because bleeding time is related to the platelet function. We are discussing here the clotting factors. It is still under human trial, so this is not gained that clinical prescription now, so it is still under human trial. Inhibitors of the thrombin, these are the low molecular weight selective inhibitors, and these are recently identified, and these are also under clinical trials. Intravenous or the subcutaneous anticoagulants, these are two: heparin and the hirudin. Heparin, as we already studied, it facilitates the effects of antithrombin, that is 83 antithrombin 3, and it inactivates the thrombin. There are two types of heparin. One is high molecular weight heparin and then the next one is low molecular weight heparin. High molecular weight heparin inhibit thrombin factor 10A and 9A both or all of them. Low molecular weight heparin inhibit the factor 10 and 9. So how to remember them? High molecular has higher functions or more functions. It inhibits the thrombin 10, 9, and low molecular weight heparin has low functions or lesser functions. It inhibits only 10A and the 9A, and it is used for the treatment of venous thromboembolism and acute coronary syndrome. Hirudin. You must heard this word and you will remember it now. It is produced by the uh, salivary glands of the Hirudo It's a medicinal leech and it is produced from salivary glands of the this medicinal leech. It is a naturally occurring and most specific inhibitor of the thrombin. So it is most specific, we need to note on that. And thrombin is essential for the blood coagulation. It is also produced by recombinant DNA technology, that's rDNA technology. So now it's commercially available. It inactivates thrombin by binding to its active site. So how it's working means we have thrombin. So this hirudin activating the this hirudin binding to the active site of the thrombin. So when it binds to the active site, the thrombin is getting inactivated. It is tried for the treatment of acute coronary syndrome and patients undergoing coronary angioplasty and deep vein thrombosis. It is mainly used for the patients who develop heparin induced thrombocytopenia. So whenever we use heparin, and so much use of heparin might cause the heparin induced thrombocytopenia, in those patients we can switch to the hirudin. This was the end of the video. If you have any doubt, please drop down them in the comment box. Until and unless, stay healthy, stay happy, study well. See you soon. Bye bye.